Coming in at number 10, we have a bit of an honorable mention with Maya Hansen from the MCU film Iron Man 3. A genetic scientist who helped create the Extremis virus, Maya doesn't really get a lot to do in the actual movie we got to see, mainly being a former fling of Tony's who is helping the main villain, tries to have a change of heart, but then gets awkwardly killed for her efforts by Aldrich Killian. In the original script of the movie, however, Maya was initially intended to be the main villain, and the mastermind behind Extremis, a former flame of Tony Stark's that had developed the technology specifically to destroy him. And while the actual movie cut down her role considerably and changed her character's fate, she still gets an honorable mention for the villainous love interest she almost was. Coming in at number 9, we have Joanna Navenna, the very first fiancée of Tony Stark. Revealed in a flashback storyline during the 1980s, Joanna was a young woman engaged to Tony Stark when he first began to act as the superhero Iron Man. Unaware of his secret double life, Joanna at first was pushed away by Tony's odd behavior and assumed him to be cheating, until he finally told her the truth about his identity as Iron Man. And while for a time Joanna would encourage Tony to keep being a hero, she would eventually come to realize that he couldn't be both a superhero and a good husband to her, and so eventually broke off their engagement and hasn't been mentioned in the Marvel Universe ever since. Coming in at number 8, we have Kathy Dare. Tony's had his fair share of bad relationships over the years, but few have ended as poorly as his romance with Kathleen Dare, a woman who took Tony's playboy ways incredibly personally and would eventually get back at Tony by shooting him in the chest. Paralyzed from this attack and suffering from severe nerve damage, Tony decided to stop his own heart so that he'd be placed into cryostasis until a solution could be found to his nerve damage. Unfortunately, Tony didn't tell many people what his plan was, causing many of his friends to believe he had died for good, and with Kathy becoming extremely grief-stricken after thinking she had killed her ex-boyfriend in a pretty dark ending to a pretty dark storyline. Coming in at number 7, we have the villainous Madame Mask. Daughter of another Iron Man villain known as Count Nefaria, Mask first met Tony Stark while undercover at Stark Industries under the name of Chrissy Longfellow. Becoming so romantically involved that they purchased a penthouse apartment together, things seemed great for Tony and Chrissy until her true identity was finally revealed and Iron Man accidentally destroyed the machine that was keeping her father alive, even if he would later reappear down the road. Furious at this turn of events, Madame Mask embraced her true scarred visage and left Tony for good, committing herself to becoming a criminal mastermind and becoming yet another member of Iron Man's Rogues Gallery. Coming in at number 6, we have Indris Mumji. Before he was one of the most beloved superheroes on the planet due to the popularity of the Iron Man movies, one of the most well-known traits of Tony Stark that has since been dropped is the character's struggles with being an alcoholic, and Indris is a character directly connected to that major storyline. Hired by the villainous Obadiah Stane, Indris posed as a bystander rescued by Iron Man and seduced Tony using pheromone chemicals along with her natural charms. Indris was ruthless and continually pushed Tony to relying on alcohol, and then eventually broke his heart at Stane's command, leaving Tony Stark at rock bottom and his drinking problems worse than ever, making this romance one of pure tragedy. Coming in at number 5, we have Bethany Cave. Another woman who met Tony during his heavy drinking phase, Bethany was assigned to Tony Stark's security team shortly after the death of her husband, and eventually found some comfort in the invincible Iron Man's arms. While Tony's drinking was a major issue in their relationship for a while, she would be an essential part in the process of helping him sober up. Unfortunately, their romance was not meant to last, as Bethany would eventually discover her husband was secretly alive, and after rescuing him from his circumstances, left Tony to be with the man she was meant to be with. Better luck next time, Stark. Coming in at number 4, we have Janet Van Dyne, aka The Wasp. Dating a coworker always comes with complications, and both Iron Man and the Wasp found out that lesson the hard way. After her marriage to Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man, fell apart, Janet found herself rebounding with Tony Stark. while being unaware that he was actually Iron Man, aka the co-founder of the Avengers team along with her and Hank. Even Captain America tried to warn Tony that their relationship was doomed for disaster, but it took Janet finding out for herself that Iron Man and Tony Stark are one and the same to put an end to their romance, even if they'd share a few more flirty moments in the future once she was properly divorced from Hank Pym. Coming in at number 3, we have Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow. If I had a nickel for every time Tony Stark was romanced by an undercover agent within his own company, we'd probably have more nickels than you'd expect. Initially falling for Natasha while she was still a spy for the Russian government, their romance initially ended once Tony found out about the whole secret agent for an enemy power thing. However, the two were surprised to find their destinies intertwined when they both were early members of the Avengers team, now fighting for the same side. And while they initially seemed ready to try their romance again, the two have since decided to remain friends and allies, and determined the fate of the planet is probably more important than their office flirting. Coming in at number 2, we have Jennifer Walters, aka the Incredible She-Hulk. Most of the relationships I've listed in this video have either ended tragically or at the very least caused a lot of drama in Tony's life. That said, it's a nice change of pace that Tony was able to enjoy a more fun and casual relationship with someone who viewed things the same way that he did, which is exactly why Iron Man and She-Hulk made such a great pair. Never afraid to call Tony out for the double standard of how their casual love lives were talked about, Jennifer and Tony had great chemistry, and when it comes to the comic books, might be my favorite pairing for Iron Man. But if you really pushed me on my favorite Iron Man romance overall, well, coming in at our top spot, we have Pepper Potts from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Pepper is a great character in the Marvel comics as well, but my favorite interpretation of this duo's relationship has to be between Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark and Gwyneth Paltrow's Pepper Potts. Capable of running Stark Industries while Tony is saving the world and battling his own inner demons, Pepper is the counterbalance Tony needs to stop himself from going overboard. And watching their arc of their relationship over the course of the entire MCU is one of the best running plot threads throughout the entire Infinity Saga. And who knows, there might not even be an MCU if the dynamic between Tony and Pepper wasn't so intriguing in the very first movie. And for that reason, I've gotta say that she's the very best.
Number 10, Morlin. Okay, so really this isn't Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman specifically, but it definitely looked like her. On Loomworld, Jessica Drew's doppelganger was actually a lover of the inheritor and villain Morlin. As such, this odd coincidence actually allowed Jessica Drew to infiltrate Loomworld to get valuable intel on the inheritors and the Master Weaver. This intel would help the Spider Army to defeat the inheritors and save the day, making the fact that she was forced to kiss Morlin worth it, I'm sure. I mean, at least I hope it was worth it. Oddly enough, although Jessica was not great at going undercover as her doppelganger, who by all regards was pretty much a big jerky jerk on this world, she still managed to get what she needed, utilizing her pheromones to distract from inconsistencies and prove that all in all, Spider-Woman is actually a really great spy, even when she has no plan and is kind of flying by the seat of her pants. Improvisational spy times. Number 9, Spider-Man. While Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman and Peter Parker's Spider-Man aren't really a match made in heaven in any regards. In fact, at times Jessica finds Peter kinda grating and Peter finds Jessica a bit too intense. Jessica Drew hasn't been the only one to take up the Spider-Woman mantle. For a time, while her powers were inconsistent, after having been lost, returned, and then stolen and slowly recovering them over time, she actually bequeathed the name to another superpowered young woman, Maddie Franklin. Maddie became known for a time as Spider-Woman in Jessica's stead after being granted superpowers of her own. She also ended up becoming enamored with one Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. At one point, Spider-Man gives Maddie his Spider-Woman CPR, and she uses the opportunity to kiss him. This was during a time when Mary Jane was MIA and believed dead. In fact, that's like the previous issue to this kiss. However, despite MJ possibly being dead, Peter felt super uncomfortable with the romance and ultimately rejected Spider-Woman, even going so far as to have her memory wiped when it came to the truth truth of his secret identity. He felt that the age difference between them was too great, and also that his secret was too big a burden for someone so young to carry. Plus, he wasn't convinced that Mary Jane was truly dead, holding out hope that she was alive and would somehow be saved in return. Turned out he was right, by the way, that did end up happening. Still, that rejection of young Maddie was pretty harsh. Memory wiped? Woo, ouch. I know she's young, but geez, that would mess me up. I mean, I guess you won't remember it because your mind was wiped, so there's that. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about more Spider-Woman love interests or just Spidey love interests in general, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. David Ashima. David was Jessica Drew aka Spider-Woman's landlord when she was living in San Francisco with her good friend Lindsay McCabe. I love Lindsay. I'm so glad that she's returned in the comics. David and Jessica hit it off and began dating. However, the relationship didn't last as eventually David Ashima discovered that Jessica Drew was secretly Spider-Woman, also known in San Fran as the Dark Angel of San Francisco. This was all too much for David, and the two ended up calling it quits on their relationship. However, it should be noted that this whole ordeal would not stop David from later asking out Kitty Pryde when some of the X-Men came to visit Jessica. Number 7. Shroud. Shroud was the love interest of Julia Carpenter's Spider-Woman. While this Spider-Woman was also married at one point, her husband and her ended up getting divorced, with him getting custody of their daughter, Rachel, due to Julia's unexplained absences as a result of her secret life as the hero, Spider-Woman. The Shroud and Spider-Woman would fall in love when he helped her after she had lost her powers. It was Shroud who helped restore them and also helped Julia to recover from being paralyzed with physical therapy. Unfortunately, the romance wouldn't last, but even after they broke up, the Shroud refused to let Julia go and began stalking her in an attempt to get back together with her because he believed it would help him, fix his life. Yeah, that didn't end well. Julia was like, don't stalk me. Stop that. I'm gonna lay a trap for you. Number 6. Captain Marvel. Carol is really just Jessica Drew's best friend forever, but despite them being the facts, there are still a ton of people who ship these two together as more than friends. The chemistry between Jessica Drew and Carol Danvers is really great, which is what makes it easy to accept that they are the best of friends, but some see that there could be more to these two than just a very close friendship. And I cannot deny myself, if either of these women decided that they wanted to date women, you know, they would actually be seemingly pretty perfectly matched for each other. There are times when Carol and Jessica in the comics even sound like an old bickering married couple, and then there are other times where they are so kind, considerate, loving, and loyal to each other that you could believe that they were like divine soulmates. So although this is a ship that isn't completely real or anything, I gotta say, I kinda like it. I kinda like it as a ship, which is why I included it. So if you ship those two as more than friends, that's alright. I stand by it. Put it in your fanfics. Number 5. Jerry Hunt. Jerry Hunt was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. who stumbled upon Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman when she was using her powers as a thief, just trying to survive and get by. Or well, she tried to be a thief briefly and then she was like, actually I shouldn't do this. I'll just be a hero instead, even though that doesn't pay anything. Oh boy, how am I gonna eat food? Coming across her path, Jerry managed to unmask Spider-Woman and found her appearance to be familiar. After he was injured, Jessica saved his life, and as he lay recovering at the end of that very first issue of Spider-Woman from the 1970s, he claimed that for whatever reason, he wanted that woman. He wasn't sure if he wanted to catch her or he wanted to love her, but boy oh boy did he want her. Jerry would later recall where he'd seen Jessica before in S.H.I.E.L.D. files where he saw her back in her Hydra days. Eventually, Jerry would end up finding Spider-Woman again, and for a time the two would even date. Jerry would also become an ally to Spider-Woman, helping her fight against villains and even trying to help her learn more about her own mysterious past. In the end, they would decide to break up when Jerry had to go back to London for work. Jess, you see, would rather stay put, and so that was the end of their romance. Number 4. Norman Osborn. For the daughter of Spider-Man, Spider-Woman Mayday Parker, she'd actually end up falling in love with the descendant of a rival family, the Osborns. It's like a Romeo and Juliet love story. I mean, maybe the Osborns also isn't a rival family, but they're at least a complicated family in regards to their relation to the Parkers, truth be told. There were both good and awful memories there. Normie Osborn, Norman Osborn's grandson and Harry Osborn's son, became May's friend and ally after she saw the tragedy in him when he was Green Goblin and actually helped to reform him. He would end up married to another reformed villain and ally, Brenda Drago, the daughter of the second Vulture. However, before that came to pass, May revealed that she had feelings for Normie. Although he rejected her, citing their 4-year age difference and the fact that her father would freak as reasons, it was later revealed that Normie actually did have feelings for May, when we saw into his comatose visions, where Normie was haunted by his grandfather, Norman Osborne, who hounded him for falling in love with the girl. Also, Normie did really like May, but they couldn't be together. It wasn't meant to be. Number 3. Hawkeye. Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman and Clint Barton's Hawkeye ended up getting together as a result of their time on the Avengers. They both developed feelings for one another and decided to start dating. However, due to some misinterpretation of the boundaries of that relationship, the two ended up calling it quits. Clint thought that he and Jess were keeping things casual, and he ended up having a one-night stand with somebody else outside of the relationship, which Jessica was not happy about when she found out, because she thought things were more serious between them and more monogamous. It also ended on a not so great note, as Jess, upset and hurt, lashed out by physically hitting Clint. Also, let's remember that Jess does have super strength, though I'm sure she wasn't using it there, but still, that makes this moment like even more worse in my mind. Both Clint and Jess made mistakes when it came to the whole situation between them, but fortunately, they were eventually able to move on and become friends again, though awkward moments still arise between the two as a result of this relationship. Number 2. Spider-Man. Obviously, we are once again switching up Spider-Womans for a moment. Although Gwen Stacy of Earth 65 is now known as Ghost Spider, there was a time when she too went by Spider-Woman. She has been known as Spider-Gwen most prominently from a reader standpoint, but within the narrative, Spider-Woman and Ghost Spider are more common names for that character. This alternate version of 616's Gwen Stacy ends up falling in love with a different Spider-Man other than Peter Parker. She is more known for her relationship with and love of Earth 1610's Miles Morales, aka Spider-Man. In fact, there is even an alternate future where these two end up together, settle down, and they have kids. In that reality, they are both heroes and also kind of celebrities because of their heroics. Number 1. Porcupine. Roger Gawking is a fan favorite when it comes to Jessica Drew's romances. He was once the villain Porcupine, who ended up becoming involved in a case that Jessica was investigating as a PI. The spouses, paramours, and villains had been kidnapped and were being kept safe in exchange for ransom money that the villains were forced to pay. When Jessica went to investigate, she found a community of villains' loved ones who were essentially pretending they had been kidnapped in exchange for money, as many of them were victims of abuse at the hands of said villains. In the end, Jessica helped to resolve this conflict while still protecting the community of victims. Roger would go on to become an ally and friend to Jess, and also act as her babysitter after her son Jerry was born. Eventually, it would be revealed that Roger had feelings for Jess, and after believing he'd been killed only to find out he'd actually survived, the two shared a kiss, with Jess confirming that she also had feelings for Roger. More recently in the comics, Jess's busy heroic life, as well as her inability to see Roger as her equal, caused the two of them to break things off. Or more specifically, Roger to dump Jessica. I gotta say though, I kinda get it. I feel like Jessica did not have a lot of time for Roger. Poor Roger. Hopefully they can get back together, maybe? Again, maybe? Not caught up with my Spider-Woman right now, so if they're back together, please don't tell me. I don't want any spoilers. Number 10. Mystique. Wolverine has been around for a long time, so it's no surprise that this is a love interest I constantly forget about, but that exists. Mystique has of course also been around for a long time, and is possibly even older than Wolverine. So of course at some point in these characters' history, they had to have worked together and of course slept together. When it comes to Wolverine and Mystique, these two actually go way back, all the way back to the Wild Wild West. It was then that Logan and Raven seemingly first met, and even teamed up together. It could have been them against the world, but of course, what usually happens with Raven when it comes to romance also happened during her time with Wolverine. Ultimately, Raven betrayed Logan, putting herself first, and it was because of this that the two ended things, and on a pretty sour note. She also ended things by kicking him out of a moving train car, so yeah. Logan's memory isn't always the greatest, but something that he wouldn't soon forget was how untrustworthy Mystique was. Even to this day, he's like, "You suck, Mystique. Also, you're gonna be lonely because you're always betraying everyone." Number 9. Maureen. She might not be from the main continuity, but Maureen had such a profound and life-changing effect on Old Man Logan that even after she and their children together were tragically murdered by the Hulk gang, Old Man Logan never once forgot about her. He even later asks a returned loved, Mariko, to look out for Maureen, who herself, after more than a lifetime of tragedy and literally going to hell and back, is finally trying to live a normal and peaceful life. Mariko, that is, not Maureen, who is dead in Old Man Logan's timeline. Old Man Logan set aside some money so that Mariko could keep an eye on younger Maureen and ideally try to protect her moving forward, as he knew that if her life continued the way it had in his timeline, it would end in tragedy. He was like, I just love her so much, I just want her to be okay. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want even more Wolverine love interests, I'm pretty sure I could do 10 more. There's a lot of them out there. Be sure to let us know that you love this list by giving it a thumbs up. Can't give it a thumbs down because that doesn't exist anymore, so just thumbs up, please. What a world we live in where we can't dislike things. Number 8. Rose O'Hara. Rose was Wolverine's first love, and for most of his life was seemingly unrequited. In the Marvel Noir universe, she is also one of his main love interests. Rose is probably the reason why Wolverine tends to have a thing for redheads, actually, although that might be a foggier part of his memory and he might not always remember that. Honestly, at this point, I'm surprised that Logan can even remember what day it is or what his phone number is without having it written down somewhere. That's just how much he's had his brain and his memories scrambled. Rose was brought in from town to be a companion to young James Howlett, aka Kid Wolverine, when he was growing up on his parents' estate. Also, just to be clear, he wasn't known as Kid Wolverine, but you know, we know him as Wolverine now, so he was a kid. You know what I'm saying. Rose was also tasked with looking after James, as he was known for being a weak and often sickly child. Rose died tragically when she ended up trying to get involved in a fight between Logan and his childhood rival, who had returned years later, Dog. It was implied then, as she lay dying, that she perhaps also did have feelings for James at some point. Wow, what a time to find that out. Unlike many of Wolverine's other love interests, Rose has not yet returned from the dead. At least, not yet, anyways. Maybe later, who knows. A lot of them do, a lot of them come back to life. Number 7. Yukio. Yukio has been both a lover and a friend to Wolverine, as well as acted as the adopted mother of his adopted daughter, Emiko. Yukio first met Wolverine during her time working as an assassin for Clan Yashida. Initially, she was Wolverine's enemy, as she actually worked for the head of the clan, Lord Shinjin, who wanted to shame and kill Logan. Yukio would develop an attraction to Wolverine, but at the time he was basically hung up on Mariko Yashida, the daughter of Lord Shinjin, so nothing came of it. However, it was because of her feelings for Wolverine that Yukio would ultimately decide to help save Mariko's life later on, despite the fact that Mariko was kinda like her romantic rival for Logan's affections. Yukio is also known for being close friends with Storm and a possibly implied romantic interest of Aurora's as well. At least that's how I see it. I feel like maybe not everybody sees those implications. But I don't know, I think I would ship Storm and Yukio, just like I would also ship Wolverine and Yukio. And just like I would also ship Storm and Wolverine. It's a nice little triangle. Little love triangle there. Number 6. Silver Fox. Silver Fox has become a complicated character since her original story as Wolverine's lover. Silver Fox is a member of the Blackfoot tribe and is Canadian. When Wolverine met her, she had recently been widowed and as such began a relationship with Logan, who had recently been accepted into living with her tribe. Silver Fox, however, would tragically die at the hands of Sabretooth, Wolverine's arch nemesis, and a vicious man and a vicious mutant. Later on, however, this act would also end up being tied to Romulus, who apparently influenced Sabretooth and did a lot of brainwash shenanigans regarding the memories of her death, and who was believed to have been behind it. Wolverine would end up attacking the people of Mount Logan and blaming them for her death because Romulus had him brainwashed to believe that that's what happened, despite Sabretooth having taken credit for killing Silver Fox, and doing so in front of Logan. Silver Fox would also later seemingly return, but it's more likely that this version of her associated with Weapon X, Team X, and Hydra was actually some some kind of clone or was an agent who was simply brainwashed and manipulated into thinking that she was the true Silver Fox. Yeah, Silver Fox became really complicated, but she used to be very simple. Number 5. Tiger. One of my favorite of Wolverine's romantic interests has to be Tiger, who is long known as one of the main crime lords of Madripoor. Before that, she was Jessen Hoan, who ended up being kidnapped by the Reavers and later saved by the X-Men. When Jessen learned that Madripoor crime lord Roche was behind the Reavers' attack, which had pretty much completely uprooted and dramatically altered her life moving forward, she dedicated her life to usurping and defeating him, taking up the mantle Tiger, or taking up the name Tiger really. That's how we know her now. Wolverine would later learn of Tiger's true identity as Jessen Hoan and would pledge himself to her cause, eventually working as her personal bodyguard while in his patch persona. During this time, Wolverine would also become a somewhat casual lover to Tiger as the two continued to grow closer together. And I love them together, I just think they're so cute. Number 4. Itsu. Itsu was Wolverine's wife at one point many years ago when he was training with the master Bando Saburo. The two fell in love, were married, and Itsu even became pregnant with Logan's child. For a brief time they were happy, until Logan accidentally stabbed a fellow member of the community with his claws. As a result, he was forced to leave, exiled, but when he went to say goodbye to Itsu, he only found her dead. Years later it would be revealed that Bucky Barnes as the Winter Soldier was actually the one responsible for her death, seemingly manipulated into killing her under Romulus's orders. Oh, Romulus, pulling all these strings and then just disappearing. Their unborn child was also stolen from Itsu's womb, and due to the child's mutant gene, which would also grant him a healing factor, survived. This child would grow up to be Akahiro, aka Daken, Wolverine's troublesome son, who was manipulated into thinking his father had killed his mother before abandoning him. And I'll just let you guess who made him believe that. If you can't guess, it was Romulus. Romulus did everything. And also nothing. Number 3. Jean Grey. Despite these two often not ending up together throughout stories told of them across various mediums, the fact remains that Wolverine will likely always carry a torch somewhat for Jeanie. Jean Grey and Wolverine are generally both never in the right place to end up together, and oftentimes their love story, if they do end up having one in whichever canon or narrative that we're talking about here, ends up being tainted with tragedy. The fact remains, however, that both Logan and Jean often count on one another to do what's right, and even turn to one another when they need someone to lean on in a time of need. Even when Jean is dead, Wolverine still has been known to fight for her honor, and when she has been alive, Wolverine has also been the one to kill her more than once. Needless to say, their relationship is way more than complicated. Number 2. Mariko Yashida. At this point, Mariko has had a long and somewhat convoluted story, but initially in the comics she was simply the daughter of Japanese crime lord Shinjin Harada, who ruled over Clan Yashida. Mariko would end up meeting Wolverine when the X-Men asked her brother, the mutant Sunfire, for help. While initially kinda scared of Wolverine, eventually the two would fall for one another, both admiring the differences of the other and also sharing a sense of kindness. Mariko would end up forcibly married off by her father and in a relationship where she was pretty badly mistreated. However, she felt compelled to stay in that marriage due to a sense of honor to her family. Eventually, however, Mariko would become free again and would even take over as the leader of Clan Yashida in her father's place. For a time, her and Wolverine were engaged, with her not wanting to be married until she had removed all the criminal ties from her family. In the end, however, Mariko would die in a criminal gang war before she could end up marrying Logan. Mariko ended up poisoned, and Logan helped her death to be less painful at Mariko's behest by making it a lot more brief. Logan would punish her killer by visiting him every year and slicing off a piece of him until he died. This wouldn't be the end of Mariko's story though, as she would continue to pop up as the forced tormentor of Wolverine in Hell, and later resurrected as Gorgon's Scarlet Samurai. Basically another lover that we just couldn't leave dead, because yeah. I also love when Wolverine comes to Hell and is like, alright, I'll free you though, Mariko, and she's like, nah, I'm good. Just remember me as I was. I don't want to go back. Like what? They could have had a happy ending there. Oh well. Number 1. Storm. Storm has always been a close friend of Wolverine's and is sometimes known for being his romantic partner as well, especially more recently in the comics. Depending on the reality we're talking about, there have also been universes where these two are firmly cemented as a romantic couple. Even in modern comics, with all the history they have shared as teammates, close friends, and romantic interests, these two's chemistry still manages to surface, and even today, they get pretty awesome flirty moments written in for them. Like during the Ten of Swords Otherworld tournament when the two faced off in a drinking contest against one another. The best thing about that, too, was that they both held their own and proved they could match each other. That's the thing about Storm and Wolverine. Both are incredibly strong, both as superheroes and as individuals, which is just a small part of why they work so well together. They're very, evenly matched, which I like.